Welcome to Stock Therapy with Penny Queen. Today I have Comstock CEO Corrado De Gasperis here. Welcome, Corrado.
Hey Penny, how are you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for joining me and congratulations on what's been a pivotal few months for Comstock. The recent shareholder letter outlines some of the most ambitious steps the company has taken yet, including the formal launch of Bioleum, the successful close of the initial 20 million Series A financing, and the continued growth of Comstock Metals. So I've spoken to many longtime shareholders, some excited by the progress, others seeking clarity on the structure, timing, and long-term value creation for retail investors. So my goal today is to bring these voices into the room while giving you the opportunity to speak directly to the broader investor base about what's ahead, how Comstock intends to deliver on its vision, and how retail can be part of the journey. So my first question, very simply, can you clarify whether there's a plan for LODE shareholders to directly receive Bioleum shares?
Yes, so thank you for that question. I think it is the most pressing point. So there's a lot of history behind it, but ultimately the answer is we preserved and want to deliver that value to our shareholders. Now, let me be even more precise. The original notion was, could you just simply spin the shares out? Could you just simply create a public registrant, right, and spin the shares out? And it's funny because when we first verbalized, hey, we're going to do some transformative transactions in 2025, including the spin out of Bioleum, the spin out at that time of Comstock Fuels, such that at the end of the day, we end up with the public Nevada-based metals and mining company and a public Oklahoma-based oil and gas company. That's the goal. Underlying the number one driving tenet of that goal is to put value in our shareholders' hands. So every decision that we make has to be to maximize the value that we're putting into our shareholders' hands. Coincident with that, we were negotiating the first Series A. And I think we've said before, there's a handful of parties. They're all strategic. Marathon closed first in February, but it was in kind. Then we had this incredible group, very strategic to us, especially from an Oklahoma infrastructure perspective, come in. And then we have other strategics, more like, Marathon, Aviation, SAF, those kinds of interested parties. And it became almost an immediate structural issue that we can't invest at a private valuation if it's controlled or owned by a public company. Ooh, big challenge. Most people would never get over that, right? How do you get someone to give you, be it 700 million or $1 billion valuation when your whole company is sitting there at, 60 million or 70 million? Big challenge. So we had to so the knee jerk, of course, is, spin it out and then it's completely and separately independent. But nobody liked that for the right reasons. The questions were, why would you have a public company that's pre-revenue and we don't see revenue for a while? Why would you want a public company that's undercapitalized, that doesn't have really a mature valuation set to it? Why would you want to create or replicate what you've been suffering at Comstock for the last 5 years? Does that make any sense to anybody? No, it doesn't make any sense to me. I would much rather, deliver on that high valuation to our shareholders today, intrinsically, inherently, based on what others are willing to pay, but preserve the right to get to that, liquidity event, for lack of a better word. So the liquidity event, what we want is to put the highest value. If that's, a $20 per share or a $400 per share, certificate in somebody's hands, that's wonderful. Okay. We also need to do it in a way where the company and the value of that company to those shareholders is de-risked, secure, and growing, right? Not fun and tradable in an illiquid or at-risk situation. So I hope all that makes sense. But the point I'm making is that the Series A investors want to make sure the company is going to be successful, not because they want a share to trade in their hand, but because they want the oil. And they don't want 100 million gallons of the oil. They don't want 14 million gallons of the oil. They want 8 to 16 billion gallons of the oil. So how do we ensure that we're going to get to 8 to 16 billion gallons of the oil? Well, we can still achieve the separation. We can still achieve the control of a public versus private. We can still fund at such a higher value that the dilution to our existing shareholders at the LODE level is nearly zero, and at the subsidiary level is less than 10%. So we're thrilled that the injections to the problems really touched on all of these points, preserving. Now, I'm not dodging the question. There's 32.5 million shares that Comstock sits on. It's embedded in the preferred security, the preferred stock that we now hold in our hand. And we preserve the right once the company's public, because obviously if the company's not public, spinning out private shares, I mean, I guess you could use them for toilet paper. There's something you could use them for, but like, what are you going to do with them if they're not public, right? So once we go public, then preserve the right to put those shares, or I would say put the value in the hands of our shareholders. So I don't know if our shareholders would care if LODE stock price went to 20x or 40x or 100x, or if they had two different shares in their hands. They might care. I don't know. But we're more interested not in those preferences, but in the highest possible value. I hope that makes sense. You can peel the onion back a little more for sure.
It does make sense. I think the biggest issue that we're facing here is one of math, honestly, because originally you said, when Marathon came in, that gives a paper valuation of 700 million. And you said that you thought of that as the floor. And then this latest investment in the Series A, that gives us a paper valuation of $1 billion. So one, you were right. But two, the math makes it difficult for everybody to work out. So you mentioned that Comstock holds 65 million in preferred equity convertible into 32.5 million Bioleum common shares. So as investors are estimating that this represents around 80% of the company, but it's hard to confirm without a clear picture of the fully diluted share count. So can you help us understand
Absolutely.
what percentage of Bioleum Comstock controls today and how much could be diluted over time?
Absolutely. So thank you for that question. So one of the prerequisites of all of the stakeholders, okay, certainly Comstock, certainly the Series A, hopefully everybody else, is to ensure that this, I used to call it a SEAL team, but it's, that implies like 6 to 8 people, right? It's like 40 people, 10 of which are so instrumental and frankly, the founding group, that nobody is going to put in, 50 million or 100 million dollars, certainly not within a range of 700 million to a billion, unless that team is here, not just here today, here to get to the finish line, And so, we're not aligned with people who believe the finish line is the IPO, but that's critical. We're aligned with people who believe the finish line is 8 to 10 billion gallons of fuel in the US alone, plus the structuring of a global supply chain, Brazil, Australia, Canada, Europe, right? What type of team is required to build literally a new standard in oil, literally a new global supply chain from one of the most abundant resources on Earth? So not to get too exaggerated there, that's our team. And I tried to say it in the AGM is these aren't employees. They're life work / founders. So we got that pushback early. These guys have no stock. These guys aren't even part of the equation. How is this right? There's some legacy issues too that they're burdened with. Like what's going on here? That's no, we're here to fix it. But Comstock has a philosophy in compensation, in alignment that says it must be performance based. Okay. So people might be surprised to hear, 20% of the equity going to the founders, which by the way is exactly what we did with Comstock Metals, Fortunato, and the team. 20%. But you're talking about starting with nothing. Starting with nothing. You have an idea, you have some patents, starting with nothing, and then successfully taking it public. So the 20% that goes to the founders, 10 people, it's not one person, 20% goes to the founders, right, is restricted, inaccessible, intangible, for lack of a better word, unless the IPO occurs. So now you've not only incented and aligned, but you've motivated speed. You've motivated speed. Like, because you could take 10 years to do an IPO. You could take 6 years to do an IPO. You could take 18 months to do an IPO. It guess who decides that, right? The team that's driving the performance. Because I could do an IPO today and we could take $1 billion valuation and reduce it to 130 million and have nothing to say about it. And if we do it in a tax inefficient manner, the shareholders who get that wonderful, beautifully logoed new Bioleum oil drop, you know, has to sell a third of it to pay taxes, and it destroys the valuation. We know how to make a market. First email I got, first email I got Thursday morning was the director of listings at the NYSE. We can't wait. We can't wait for this, Corrado. Please don't think about the NASDAQ. Like, don't leave the family, please, right? So that was exciting. This is only part of the answer, but let's keep going, Penny, because it's the right discussion.
All right, Corrado, the biggest question and concern that I've been hearing out of other shareholders has to do with the employee stock option plan. So I would like to ask you very directly, how much of that 20% going to founders is going to you?
So that's zero, right? Like I want to just make sure it's clear. Like the founders group, this is Kevin Chrysler, David Winsness, Raul Babiali, Chad, Colby, Mike Riebel, one of the initial investors. These guys are fully dedicated to this company. They're the ones that have created this entire opportunity. There is a proper and tax efficient way to reestablish that equity and make it performance based. For them, we don't need 13 milestones that are effectively the prerequisites to an IPO. We'll just set the restriction at the IPO. Simple. Okay. Now, I am an employee of the company. In fact, I'm the only employee of both companies, but I am the lead fiduciary of Comstock. So for my equities in Comstock, my alignment is with LODE shareholders. We have a metals business, we have a mining business, we have this incredible world-changing biofuel business. But ultimately, the value has to come through to the LODE shareholder. We're disappointed that it hasn't come through yet, but we're not delusioned. We understand that validation needs to be hard. $20 million in cash is hard. Okay. But there are other strategics who want to provide feedstock agreements. There are other strategic who want license agreements of like whole nations. There's others, and then explodes into sustainable aviation fuel who want offtake. We hired Elvis Ebekati to lead the offtake commercialization into aviation. As these shoes drop, more and more validation will occur, and it has to be reflected, in low share price. Now, if it isn't, then there's things you can do. Right? You could buy back shares. You could spin off shares. You could put shares directly into the hands of our shareholders. But I don't want to put shares in the hands of our shareholders because they either don't believe what we're doing or because, they think that that's going to result in an automatic or immediate highest valuation. That's not true. The new administration, although thankfully, joyfully, is supporting of biofuels, created a lot of chaos around environmental fuels, a lot of confusion around renewable energy, a lot. And so if you look at the trading of these stocks, these so-called competitors to Bioleum, they're not, okay? But like the so-called, it's terrible. So why would we want to go public prematurely was the question that Series A asked us. Why would we want to go prematurely was the question that the Comstock board asked us. And the answer is you don't want to do it prematurely. You want to do it at the absolute best possible time. Ring that bell in New York, with glory, and glory means high, high, high valuation. Then preserve. It was very important to me because we use the term spin out. We feel like we just did spin it out. We separated it, it's out. But the word spin out has a lot of different connotations. We didn't mean to imply that, and I think I said many times, we don't know how we're going to do it. It's complicated. We have to work through the tax issues. We have to work through the control issues. So we worked through all of those effectively. The Series A had a big prerequisite need, which is we cannot invest in a private subsidiary that's controlled by a public company. Okay, well, that's a big thing. How do we ensure that we can govern our investment? We're the biggest investor. So we have half the board. So Corrado's the chair of that board. But we need to do it in a way, though, where the companies are truly independent, meaning we will deconsolidate Bioleum from the Comstock Inc. financial statements. What's great about that, Penny, is you're going to see the cash flows from metals very fast. You're going to see a growth profile on revenues that's very fast. You're going to see a ridiculously low relative CapEx cost relating to metals. So all of a sudden, resources investors who love silver, who love precious metals, who love aluminum, who love copper, and who don't have to have this albatross of like hundreds of millions to build a refinery or 20 million a year in expenses, destroying that financial profile. Now you can have this beautiful financial profile for Comstock. Like I don't think anyone's gonna, I've never seen a throughput model like this. Extremely low variable cost, extremely fast, a panel every 7 seconds. Pay you up front, right, to take the panels, pay you again on the back end to take the panels or what the panels become. That profile, this was a very interesting question the special committee was posed. What does Comstock look like if you separate fuels? Is it a going concern? Did you just impair the value? And everybody chuckled. No, it's the exact opposite, right? You've taken metals, which has been burdened, hidden in the shadow of this overwhelming capital requirement, this overwhelming, right, fuels thesis, which is not, it's less mature than metals. Metals, TRL7, been operating for more than a year, right? Generating cash. Oh my God. Nobody cares because why? Because fuels is burning. So the separation was a win-win. Win for metals, win for Comstock, who still is the largest shareholder by far, and we can govern it, right? I'm not saying with an iron fist, but it's an iron fist. Okay, we govern it. Then with great stakeholders, existing LODE shareholders, Comstock, management, Series A. Beautiful. The stronger that capital base, the faster we get to the $500 million recognized, then get to the billion, then get to 2 billion, then get to 20 billion, and then beyond. Okay. The capital base is prerequisite. It's prerequisite. This is what I said in February. We need the authorized capital to be able to do some very important things. Oh, no, it's a reverse split. They're always disasters. They always result in zero. You're done. No. It's a prerequisite to get to where we are right today. I wish the credibility would result in higher, faster recognitions, But I believe it's because we need to do a better job. I believe it's because we need to prove it more definitively. I don't believe it's because, we have bad investors. We have great investors. I believe we need to prove it more definitively. But this is just one step in, like, 20 that are coming, and they're not coming in 5 years. Did you ask me when do we think we could go public? Look, the market will ultimately tell us. We want to be prepared. If the market is on fire and we prove some integrations, David sells some crazy solutions into pulp and paper or sugarcane or corn ethanol. One of our strategic licenses a whole country and breaks ground. Oklahoma starts being built, or even Oklahoma's up and running, or Madison does 2 barrels a week. These things will be red hot, or the aviation industry somehow wakes up in the morning and says, oh my God, there's like only one technology that can actually supply the gallons that we've told everybody we need. That's happening right now. Like, oh my God, there's only one technology that actually allows you to make billions of gallons of SAF. Only one. There's only one. Right? People are realizing that now. So, all right, Corrado, you're a magician. Like, how the heck did you get somebody to be willing to pay $1 billion valuation, $700 million valuation, whatever the number? How did you get them when the whole company is only worth X? Because they need the oil. There's no other way to get it. Zero. Doesn't exist. You want 100 million gallons? Maybe 5 or 6 of these little niche competitors can compile that, amalgamate that for you if they were working together. You need billions of gallons? There's only one place to go.
All right, so I'm going to summarize what I heard there because there was something really important that you said, and then we just kind of moved on. So, how much of that 20% are you getting? The answer was 0. I'm pretty sure I heard you basically explain that your path to wealth is as a Comstock shareholder.
100%.
Okay. So,
And if I get incentive in Bioleum, it's going to be striking as an option, most likely above the Series A valuation, meaning there's no gifts, right? Everything is on the come only and only if we create value. That's also true with the 20%. If they don't get to the IPO.
and that the value is currently pegged at.
The value of Bioleum is currently pegged at floor set by Marathon of 700 million, $1 billion plus in the last 20 million that came in. It's like 2%, might be less than 2% of the company. My God. Oh my God. Right. And it will be finalized. We haven't talked about this, right? We see the rest of the Series A occurring June, July, August. Okay. And the only reason I'm saying August is because we've got a bunch of new people now making inquiries. Everyone else we've talked to is, in the red zone. They're done with their diligence. They're finalizing details. They needed to know what we announced on Thursday before they could move forward. What does the cap structure look like? What does the organizational structure look like? What does the alignment with the management look like? What is the spend plan look like? All that's now T's are being crossed, I's are being dotted, materials delivered, final stage.
Right. So you're an accountant. Help me out with some math here.
Yep. Yep.
What would the value of a share of Comstock be right now if we were to recognize $1 billion in value?
Okay. So at $1 billion, okay, $1 billion, I mean, you're pushing like $24, $25 a share at $1 billion. Yeah, it's at $24 a share. I had to
I'm sorry, I made you do the math I'd already done, but
24.
all right. Well, the last question I have on the ESOP pool or any further equity grants is, will they be subject to shareholder approval or a formal review process by the board?
It will. So in Bioleum's case, those two things are one and the same, right? So Comstock is the board. Series A is the board. right? So those are the shareholders of Bioleum. Those are the board of Bioleum. Of course, 100% have to be approved, by them going forward. And I'm telling you, the special committee Comstock has already made it crystal clear that it's 100% performance-based. There's no gifts. It's 100% aligning and performance-based to the goal. So we know what was important, I think, because this is where you could get misalignment, like a marathon or these guys can say, we don't really give a shit if you go public or not. Like all we care about is the oil. We prefer you don't, right? Nobody said that. Everybody said we're 100% on board with going public. However, let's do it smartly. Let's do it at the right best time. Let's ensure success of the company. That's inherently aligning.
Yeah, I'll say my preference is also not to immediately get shares and then get hit with a 30% or a 43.5% tax hit on it.
Yeah.
So I would prefer for it to be done much more strategically. As much as I would love, like I personally would love 2 different shares. That's
Cool, because
that's
Bioleum's going to be a cool company. We all want that. That's why we're going public. Okay.
yeah.
Let me just say this though. This is in the spirit of like absolute and total transparency. In January, we were reacting to Series A saying we cannot invest in a private company that's controlled by a public company. The knee jerk was then just spin it. Okay, just spin it. Okay, that was the knee jerk. Okay, but once we got into with the tax lawyers, there has to be at least a 5-year maturity. This is an IRS rule, a 5-year maturity of the existing company, right, before it can be tax free. So we were initially upset by that, but however, when we started structuring around it, we realized that where we ended up was better. It's absolutely undeniably better, for the ultimate value. If people have time frame differences, then that's an inherent misalignment. Okay. Our business plan takes us to serial 1 being up and running. Our business plan takes us to 8 billion gallons in the United States alone. That could be 50 facilities. Okay. We're going to create value across that entire spectrum. Now, when you have a public security, you have liquidity, you can sell it when you want. That's how you cure the misalignment. If you need to monetize in 2 years and Corrado wants to monetize in 17 years, then just sell. Okay. You get to take the value when you decide is best for you. So ultimately, you can do that now today through LODE shares. Ultimately, we will preserve every possibility of being able to do that with Bioleum shares. I won't be the sole person that decides the timing and the structure, but we all agree we want it to be public. And ultimately, if we can do it efficiently, we want to get it into the hands of our shareholders.
Yeah, there's a tax loss carry forward that I very much want to take advantage of, as I'm sure you do as well.
Yes, very good. That's a good point. We have 255 million of net operating loss carry forwards on our balance sheet. Our balance sheet's going to be cool now, Penny, right? Like it's going to be pure metals, cash flows, revenues, growth, total transparency to that business. And we know a lot of investors, frankly, who that's their number one thesis. That's what they want. I've started to say now, I wasn't saying it before as much, but I started to say now, our business plan in 2028, we're the largest silver producer in Nevada. In 2030, we might be the largest silver producer in the country. That's not small. That's monstrous. That was hidden before. It's now going to be open and marketed clearly as what Comstock's core business is, metals and mining. But we have an investment in real estate. Guess what we're doing? Selling it. We have an investment in Green Line. Guess what we're doing? Selling it. We have an investment in Bioleum. A little bit more intimate there. But ultimately, the goal will be for Inc. to monetize it in the most efficient way that puts the most amount of value into our shareholders' hands. And guess what I'm going to do? Whatever incentive I get at the Bioleum, I'm going to be buying LODE shares because I know what the exact arbitrage is. $3 to 24, $3 to 40, $3 to 400, whatever. Okay. I know what that arbitrage is.
Do Series A and Marathon investors hold the same class as Comstock? And what voting or conversion rights come with each?
Excellent. Okay. So we have, I mean, in a macro sense, we'll have two classes, preferred and common. Let's just say that first. Okay. Now in the preferred, Series 1, I like to think of it as Series Seed, but Series 1 is Comstock, converts to 32.5 million common shares of Bioleum. Okay. Series 2 is the management. I'm sorry, the founders. It's different than the management. Management's a much bigger group. Founders, Series 2. Series A is the new money, and it will be convertible at a specific number of shares, just like Comstock, once the final A book is closed and the final valuation is set. Now, because Marathon has a little a cap at 700, they'll have Series A1. And the only difference between A and A1, the only difference will be the conversion rate because they're capped. Now, if we did the whole rest of the deal at 700, which we're not going to, then it would all be Series A. But if we do it higher than 700, then Marathon has a little -1 next to the A because of that. Now, critical last piece. Okay, and this is why I want to raise more Series A. We would like the Series A to take us to the IPO. Okay, we would like the Series A to be sufficient to take us to the IPO. Now, if we end up doing a Series B at 3 or 4 billion, I don't think people are going to complain. Okay, but we would like the Series A to take us to the IPO. In that context, we protected the founders 20% to the IPO, but it shouldn't be a big difference, right? It shouldn't be a big difference. So if you want to use the term anti-dilution or whatever, Series A, we want them to be at 20% at the IPO. They're here for us forever. Okay, these guys are the guys and gals that are getting us all the way to the finish line. So was that helpful? Did I answer the question?
It was helpful, but I still have this question
When
was sent into me, and
when the Series A is done,
I think we need to cover it because we're kind of straddling this.
when the
So
Series
you
A,
mentioned the Comstock holds a majority of Bioleum. Series A will end up with less than 10%, and the founders might hold up to 20%. If the ESOP and Series A together add up to 30, how does that square with Comstock retaining an 80% stake?
right, great question. So, okay, so the minute we signed the documents, right, Comstock had 80%, management had a restricted 20%. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is that that doesn't be unrestricted until the IPO, which is the ultimate performance, because we don't believe the IPO can be done until all these other milestones prove, what we're doing. Is it technically possible? It is, but no one wants to see that done prematurely, and this ensures that. Okay. Then the 20 million we closed, I didn't do the exact math, but it's probably 1.8%. So how does it square? Assuming Marathon has a safe on the A1, I'm sorry, it's complicated, but that won't close until the Series A closes and the final value is set. But if it hits 700, meaning if we hit the cap, which we're going to, then it's 2%. Okay, so 76% Comstock, 20% restricted to management, 2% Marathon, almost 2% for the next one. We don't want that 4%. It's not really gonna, it's almost certainly not gonna exceed 10. So let's just say 10. So then you're at 70, 20, 10 with an incredible capital base, strategic, fully funded, clear path to everything that needs to be accomplished. Why don't people give you the valuation, Corrado? Why don't they recognize the value in Bioleum? Because if it's not funded, if it's not strategically integrated, it ain't ever going to happen. That's why. It's very rational. The market is actually efficient. It's rational. Now they need to see, who are these people? What do they contribute to the equation? How much has it been de-risked? Woohoo! Like, that's what we're doing.
Okay, you answered that very well. Last part of that one is, are there like ratchets? Are there any anti-dilution rights or protective provisions that we should be aware of?
Yes, thank you so much for asking that. The only ones, other than what I've already said, in terms of the founder stake to the IPO, the only ones is that in the money that we just brought in, even though the valuation is set at over $1 billion, the agreement is it will correct to the final Series A values. So if let's just use an example. If the Series A ends up at 900 or 850, okay, then the 20 million that just came in will harmonize to that number. I don't think of it as a ratchet down because we decided that we were going to close it in tranches purposely. Normally you wait till the whole book is done and then just close it all at once. Sorry about that, right? We didn't want to slow down the speed at which Oklahoma is coming online. So whatever that series, the Series A will be at a final number, and everyone in Series A will be at that number. If the number is 700, then it's everyone. If the number is higher than 700, Marathon will be at the 700 because they put 3 years of blood, sweat, and tears into this thing. No one else has done that, and everybody else will be higher. So you have Series A, Series A1. There's nothing, then everything is good.
Okay, so
Well, sorry, this is actually a really good question. If we end up doing Series B at lower, which we would never do because we control that, there would be an adjustment to the Series A. So there's a little bit of protection there, and that makes total sense because of the level of maturity. I love saying this over and over, once Serial 1 is up and running in Oklahoma, that's the corn ethanol analogy, they built 200 facilities in the next 7 years. Once we show people 140 gallons per ton of dry wood, there's going to be no more debates. That's the final achievement that makes this thing go viral, for lack of a better word. We don't need to go viral if the 10 most strategic players in this industry are vested. Okay, we don't need to go viral. But when we go viral, then people will like the IPO discussion, right? Kevin and I will be fighting. Kevin, and I will all be holding the thing, Chad, Raul, to ring the bell, right? Like, we'll all be up there together fighting for the hammer. It's really not a hammer. I don't know if you've ever rung the bell. It's just a little button behind the thing, but they hold up the hammer to make it look like, the way they used to do it.
okay, so Comstock stake in Bioleum could be worth 700 million then at $1 billion valuation. 78. Yet LODE is still trading around $3 a share. What do you believe is the key to unlocking value for retail, and how can communications and transparency help bridge the gap?
The 8K now should be a yawn because you've pummeled me with every question that will be in there. Number two, we'll still publish it. Then you're going to see a balance sheet with $20 million on it plus, right? All these things will start to add confidence. To me, though, the next big thing is the second and third shoe. I'm sorry, the third and fourth shoe that drops on Series. I remember Marathon dropped, number two dropped, the third and fourth shoe dropping will really say, holy crap. Okay, holy crap, this is validation now. Marathon's not enough. Uber wealthy Oklahoma infrastructure is not enough. Like, we need more. Okay, so then I think the next thing is, Winsness and Company, selling solutions, integrating solutions into existing platforms. So yeah, Oklahoma, we're building a greenfield, right? But when you start integrating into a pulp and paper mill, integrating into a sugarcane mill, integrating or back integrating corn ethanol into woody biomass, oh my gosh, that calculus isn't even in the model. Holy crap. That means faster revenue. That means faster adoption. That means it's actually proven before Oklahoma comes online. Wow. So I think all those things will the value's just going to keep going up and up and up. And I guess those are all the positives, Penn, but like, let's talk about the alleviation of the negatives. 65% of my liquidity needs just disappeared. Judd's job, I mean, no disrespect to Judd, dude, it's easy. Like now it's easy. Okay. We need to raise a little bit of money for metals. We got a lot of interest now. Largest silver producer in the country, blah, blah, blah. That's a big part of this equation. That has to start lifting people's views of Inc, Comstock, the Comstock LODE, the Silver Kings. However, there's another piece of it, and you're intimate with it. These stupid, miserable converts. Bye-bye. That's putting this negative pressure on us. So there's a number of convergences here. This is just the beginning. Let's let it mature. Let's let it digest, right? We had to settle some obligations. Remember, we used some shares to take out American Science and Technology. That was part of the deal when we acquired the fuels business, that we took on their obligation to settle with Dr. Ali and AST. Now we settled some other things because the A did not want, and nor do I think our stakeholders want, Bioleum to come over with legacy baggage. Clean it out. But I very importantly said it last 2 weeks ago, with all that considered, settling AST, settling some of the legacy from what we acquired, because we originally acquired via an earnout. There was an earnout. Hey, you guys aren't proven. We're not going to do this without an earnout. We'll do it with an earnout. Then Series A comes and is like, we don't want that baggage coming with us. Okay, we'll settle that with shares. We'll settle this with shares. Guess what? It's between 32 and 33 million. I said it, I knew it was coming, right? Like that's the number. But guess what? We're going to preserve that number. We're going to preserve that number in in the underlying security, so that we can either monetize it very efficiently and or distribute it right to our shareholders. So everything that we did led back to our shareholders. There might even be some scenarios where we put a little tiny bit of money in there, but we're going to get equity in return for that. Okay, so like every possibility was considered and checked to the benefit of our shareholders. Every single one. You'll see it in the Series A. I mean, you'll see it in the AK. And then, maybe some people have one or two follow-up questions, but it's all consistent with what I just reviewed. It was exhausting, Penn. Like, I mean, exhausting. But I can't believe you can get to solutions with a lot of contention. You can get to solutions with some conditions subsequent. No, we settled everything in advance, full alignment. Everybody's locked and loaded, ready to go. That's what I feel the proudest about. We've set up this thing to actually succeed. Now, if it was a little $500 million opportunity or $1 billion opportunity that was a cool little business that we could be proud of in California or something, who cares, right? This is globally impacting. This is globally, I mean, the new administration wants to always talk about energy dominance. Okay, we deliver that. That's cool. But what's even cooler, I think, is we can create energy independence in Africa, in Philippines, in Pakistan. I don't want to get political about it. This is about humanity, just having energy. Kardashev won. I mean, we can be part of getting to Kardashev 1. Are you out of your mind right now? It's going to happen, by the way, not because of us. The convergence of tech and what's happening right now is just, we are entering into a golden age when it comes to energy. And if we get there with water and food, then we might have a shot at surviving this whole thing.
I wasn't expecting our conversation to turn to the Kardashev scale, but
That's what the founders are all about.
before we start, building a sphere around the sun, I have a couple more questions. And you just keyed into it a bit, but does Comstock plan to monetize any of its Bioleum stake through partial sales or use of proceeds to fund metals expansion or repay debt? Or is the plan to hold through IPO and beyond?
Not selling any of the Bioleum stake for any other purpose, if that was your question. Yep. Yeah. No. no, that's the highest potential value. It's the higher risk, but it is by far the highest reward. And that's no disrespect to metals because that's going to be a 10-figure equation for sure. But it's a complete the divergence of the two business models, right? Where you have a high capital, still materially needing to be de-risked, first facility still needs to come online, still raising that foundational capital base, and it's really, really big. Yeah, it's great that we got 152 million bond allocation. Yeah, it's great that our 50 million Series A could potentially be 75 or 100. That's all awesome. People should be excited and encouraged. But metals need 6 million bucks. They generate, one facility will generate 50, 60 million a year. Three facilities will generate 180 million a year. Put a little multiple on that and then tell me what we're worth, right? It's remarkable. And that's three facilities. We don't see anybody in metals that can scale. And the notion of scaling and speed are interdependent. Throughput is a speed-based measure. How fast, how big? It's the numbers they're not synonymous, but they're interdependent, right? The faster we go, the bigger we get. Very, very low capital, obscenely low variable cost, and speed. You can have very, very low variable costs and take a month to build a product, or you could do it in 7 seconds. Okay, that's what we're talking about here.
Okay, so let's talk metals for a second.
Yeah.
It's gaining recognition, right? Especially after the certification, which I will not bother to spell out with all the letters, but what's your roadmap to monetize your first mover advantage at scale? Will we see partnerships or M&A to accelerate that growth?
Good question. So we have a clear independent path. Okay, like right now, the partnerships are the customers. The customers, which are customer and supplier is synonymous in this business. So the RWEs, right? The 4 or 5 MSAs that we're deep into, master service agreements for long-term relationships. And because the capital is relatively so low, like we could do this 100%. However, there are some European partners, there's some Asian partners, there's some even American, no one's doing solar. Okay, but like waste aggregators, electrification product recyclers, that have like, I don't know, a dozen sites east of the Mississippi. We're concentrating on the West because that's where the market for these panels are today. However, we're getting requests from Florida, from Pennsylvania, from New Jersey, from Alberta, so if we could partner with someone that accelerates the platform, already have permitted sites that we can start deploying our system, that would be very cool. We're very interested in that. People are approaching us for that. But right now, we're full speed ahead, like tunnel visioned to get industry scale #1 up. We believe we'll have the permits in the fourth quarter. We'll start ordering the equipment soon so that the equipment arrives sort of similar to the timing of the permits, and then Q1 commission it. Then we're big and we're going. But as soon as we have line of sight on that permit coming through and we order those equipments, as soon as those two things happen, we're looking at site #2, site #3. And not necessarily to build it, secure the site, submit the permit, submit the storage permit, because then that retains our early mover advantage. We could have 10 sites in the United States. I mean, if you had 10 sites in the United States, I mean, 3 sites is 180, 150 million. You could do the math. It's simple. I mean, 150 million cash flow.
Just gonna say, don't say that too loudly. I kind of like the stock price where it is.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. We're gonna start people seeing accumulating now until bigger players get the gist of it. And when the bigger players get the gist of it, it's not gonna go slow. But
yeah, I saw the shareholder letter come out and I thought to myself, holy shit, he pulled it off. That's I'm a little sorry that it is as complicated as it is, and because I think a lot of people have had situations with companies where they were very self-serving.
Yep.
And with such a complicated transaction, there's a lot of scenarios that you can come up with that are that way. So this is my final question, and I think you've already answered it. I think you've answered it well, but I want to hear it nice and concisely. And this was sent in to me, so I'm going to read it verbatim.
Sure.
Several long-term investors mentioned they hope to see your interests remain more closely tied to LODE than to Bioleum. How do you personally think about alignment, not just as an executive, but as a fellow shareholder?
Yeah, fantastic. So I want to give you some color. When you said, holy shit, he pulled it off, right? Chad, Kevin, David, Raul, some younger folks that you don't know worked around the clock for the last 8 to 10 weeks. My role was the gatekeeper for LODE. My role was I was the one, hammering the table with them, talking about alignment, ensuring everything's performance based, and then I was the one that went back to the LODE special committee, and then they are hammering the table with me. And I want to make sure that the hammering was passion. The hammering was how critically important this is to do right for our shareholders. When you look at the responsibilities of loyalty, the responsibilities of good business judgment that fiduciaries of a public company board have, it's legal. But what was beautiful about this outcome, Penn, is that we achieve full alignment, where how they say in a good negotiation both parties walk away a little upset. We think that's bullshit. Like we believe in innovation, not compromise. We believe in solving for all the needs, not taking, right? So we got to that point where the investor was thrilled, we are thrilled, the management was thrilled. There was contention. If ever there was a feeling that someone was trying to take something, right, that didn't go over. Okay, that just did not go over, and it never really happened, right? It was just, no, let's make sure we understand what we're saying. Let's make sure we understand where we need to get to. Okay, I'm fine as long as it's 100% performance based. So let me tell you, when this thing ends up, if we go over 50, right, you'll end up seeing 4 Comstock directors with Corrado as the chair, and 3 Series A and Kevin. So, you'd end up having 8 directors where we're leading this thing. That symmetry, that balance is the alignment that we were looking for. So Comstock is in a powerful position, although technically we didn't want to swing it to control, because if we swung it to full control, then we have to consolidate it. Then all the benefits to the metals clarity is lost, right? The burden, the financials would be impossible to understand. Why do the financials need to be separate? Why does fuels need to be deconsolidated from Comstock? Because so the investors can purely understand the horsepower of this metals financial business plan, and they can purely understand Bioleum, and Comstock investors can understand that Bioleum is fully funded. Okay, we are a shareholder, but we are no longer the funder. That's a big, monstrous, achievement. To do it at high values, it's a bonus. Okay, but it worked out very, very well. So I think this is good. Like, do we forget anything? I don't think so. Like I am going to be an employee of both companies. I want to reemphasize that. I'm going to be the only person. We don't want shared services. We're doing everything in our power for the IPO, that this is an independent public company. There'll be a little bit of transition, some of the accounting and some of the things. Oh, transparency. You made me just think of something. So transparency. Even though we will deconsolidate and you'll have clean ink statements, we will have disclosures about the Bioleum's financials. We will have clarity. They will be fully and separately audited. Okay, so our investors can have the assurances, A, and the transparencies, B. But we affected something, and it was substantive.
All right, that was that was another thing that's come up a few times. It's when it's still private within this public entity, that's I think
Have
that's where it
transparency.
becomes easy to hide things. And I thoroughly appreciate the transparency, and I think it's necessary, especially for something where, you know, retail, we're in this for a long time. I'm sure there's traders in here, and that's fine. You know, everybody appreciates their volume, but
Sure.
like this message is for your core, and this is still a retail story, and
Great.
there's so much to be gained here. And I'm not talking about global impact. I'm just talking about money, right? There's a lot to be gained here. And yeah, I appreciate the transparency. I appreciate you speaking with me so quickly and getting this out, because it's so complicated. I mean, even I had to run a whole bunch of numbers through ChatGPT the other day to go, wait a minute, there's 20 different ways to look at this. We need to get the facts out there. We need to do it quickly. So
yeah, I appreciate you doing this. It's incredible how you have such good insight, but also just between Thursday and today, I've talked to, like, I think probably 4 of our top 10, and then I've committed a tremendous amount of capacity, importantly, critically, happily, to talk to as many people one-on-one. This interview will help those conversations. You'll really help explain a lot in advance of that, and hopefully allow me to be more efficient, getting through. But it's important that they all understand it.
perfect. Well, thank you for joining me. I'm going to continue to field questions from everyone else and make sure that, you know, when we need to do another interview, I'm available for it, and that we can. This is a really proud moment for the company. Yeah. So I'm appreciative of everybody on the team's efforts and pushing this forward, because, you know, when I got involved in this story, I think it was maybe back in September, you know, it was like a 12-cent stock. We are sitting much higher than that today. I believe your average is right around $4, right?
Yep. Yeah, we had a good problem. I mean, the divergence of these two companies, but it was a real thing, and I think we've structured and solved for it. So there is complexity. You did I think a masterful job of laying out what the most salient points of that complexity are. But once the dust settles and people understand it, it's very well aligned. In that way, it's simplicity. We're all aligned to the same goal. Everybody wants to see the same thing. You know, if you want to get off the train at the IPO, that's great. If you want to get off the train at 4 billion gallons, that's great. If you want to stick around for 8 billion gallons, that's great. We're aligned. That's the journey. That's the path.
All right. Well, the last thing I'll leave people with is that I'll let them know that a breakout here is 350 to 370, and my first targets are 5 to 550. My second target is over $7. So we can talk about the technical analysis on this, but I think the information really needs to trickle down and be digested by everyone here in retail, and everybody can decide how much a piece of the pie they want.
Outstanding.
Wonderful. So thank you again for your time, and we'll be talking soon.
Wonderful weekend. Thank you.